Hey guys, my name's Chris Bromley. I'm the owner of Unfun Stuff Games here in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And I'm here in my room at home, enjoying my day off. And as a huge fan of Universes, the game, and Universes, the company, um, I've been playing the game for a long, long time, and I will be playing the game for an even longer time, as long as it's available, in fact. I, like a lot of other people, have just finished reading the new retro ban list, and I have a few feelings about the philosophy and the decisions that are being made over at UVS Games. Before we get into that, I'd like to wax poetic, if you'll allow me, for a moment about the history of the retro format. Um, in concept, it's a format with all of the Jasco era sets. So everything from Red Horizon all the way through the My Hero block, right? Now, at the time that I played it, it was just all the stuff that was available, right? We didn't have My Hero at the time. But lots of games have eternal formats, right? Or a historic format, opening up their games to interactions not intended to work together and also to celebrate the history of the game. Magic has a really popular eternal format. Well, I don't know about really popular, but certainly I've heard about it. Yu-Gi-Oh's never rotated a single set ever. And Pokemon has an expanded format where you have tons and tons of these older cards. And it's cool that they continually update it with new bands and unbans and erratas and stuff like that. But for UFS and Universes, right, as it's called now, retro only blossomed during one time period, and it was the pandemic. During the pandemic, we all sat at home, twiddling our thumbs, practicing social distancing, and this was a bad deal for card game companies. Who need you to go into a store and spend money and play in tournaments, and then hopefully go to a big national tournament on the other side of the country. During the pandemic, we weren't going on planes, we weren't going to stores, we were wearing masks everywhere, we were freaking out, trying not to die to, this horrible virus. So while we weren't running in-person events, Jasco Games hosted the Retro Series, okay, which is a series of tournaments. I think it was once or twice a month, ending with a huge invitational event. It was really cool, and they experimented with a lot of new forms. It gave us our 10-card sideboard. It gave us no diversity, right? It was a really great time for Jasco to experiment with new ideas and apply them. And I think it's really positive. The impact it had on the format and the card game in general was very positive overall. Because they couldn't host these in-person events, they used this retro series and pulled in older cards, right? Using the tabletop simulator to allow the masses to have them, right? Because a lot of these older sets were hard to find and very rare. UFS was a niche card game for a long time, and it really still is. So it was hard to find SNK cards, hard to find Mega Man cards, hard to find those old Red Horizon cards. And me, having never had the opportunity to play with a lot of these cards, I jumped at the opportunity, right? And over the course of 2020 and 2021, I played in or commentated over a dozen retro events, and I had a blast, breaking in the format. And me and my really good friend Jose, who you may know as one of the most winning players in the My Hero Academia CCG, really cut our teeth competitively in this card game during that period. And I think without the retro series, we would have just dropped the game and done other things. So let's talk about the post. There's a really great quote from it. I really love it. I adore it. Okay, it says, "What's really great about retro is that many amazing combos or possibilities that have been played in the past eras of the game are kept intact, with a growing number of new ideas and decks to discover. It's a higher power format where you can let loose your wildest ideas with very few exceptions. There are a number of banned cards, but we aim to keep those bans limited to true outliers that break interactive play." I love that. Conceptually, that makes sense. That's what we did during the retro period, right? We started off allowing people to stack their older characters who got unbanned with their erratas or their most recent printings, right? And we found out, Whitzel 1's really broken if you just let them stack Whitzel 2. Banner hits Whitzel 1, right? We found, really broken interactions that got banned quickly. And that was part of the grand design. That was the experiment, and it was a lot of fun to do. The next thing they went into on the article was a little less fun though. Let's talk about some of these unbans. Bang, Goro, Shiva, Forbidden Knowledge, Aircraft Carrier Trotman. I don't know much about the last two. I don't even know if they were banned during the retro period. But we have all heard somebody say, those who are not willing to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And unfortunately, I think both philosophically and mechanically, Universus Games, the company, has chosen not to learn from the retro era. Let's talk about Bang for a moment. I spent some time going through the Wayback Machine trying to find the old article that Tim Freely wrote about Bang and why it wasn't included in the retro series. It's a card that allows you to seal any card in your opponent's staging area, okay? It lets you turn off their character. That's what it does. So the card actually says, it says seal your opponent's character. It's a stopgap measure in an era of the game when characters begin to have their power knobs just squeaked up. And by squeaked up a little bit, I mean a lot. Characters got very, very powerful in the Bebop and post-Bebop world. And Bang was a card that let us turn off those characters offensively and defensively, okay? Its exclusion was to allow characters, or its exclusion in retro, rather, was to allow characters who were problematic to fully extend their wings. Conceptually, Bang's exclusion from retro was to allow characters who were problematic to fully extend their wings, because retro was an experiment, right? Bang was a faucet handle that you could turn when your opponent's most potent win condition or defensive condition were available to them, right? And philosophically, it's apparent that Universus Games prefers people's satisfaction and the competitive nature of the game to be preferred over the general health of the format and good and accurate data collection for curating this format, right? And I think that's a shame. Bang being available is going to make it so the competitive decks will play them, and the characters who only really function or who really will only expand their make their presence known when they're not turned off are going to be turned off, and it's going to make their impact less known. So I think it'll make it so it's harder for us to find the really truly problematic cards, and it'll be easier to dismiss when a character is really truly broken because they can just get banged on the turn. Okay, let's talk about Goro and Shiva and forehand size in general. During the retro series, we saw Goro and Shiva win events and then pretty immediately receive bans. They're both characters that are very, very powerful. Goro tutors any 4 cards, and the cards he flips over in order to get them count for 2 when passing checks. So he grabs 4 attacks and he chucks them at you, and he passes all the checks, and oftentimes you die, and it's very hard to kill him because he has 40 health. And so it's tough. And what we ended up seeing is that he had this singularity of, since he had 10 years of cards to pull from, he could play the best ones, right? So he ended up drawing tons and tons of cards, and he would chuck all his attacks with 4 damage on them, and he'd flip through his deck, and on turn 2 or 3 he would have the best 4 attacks in his deck to chuck at you. But he also ended up drawing more cards, and he went very, very resource positive, and ended up defending not unlike a 7-hander, which is not healthy when you have double a 7-hander's health total. On the flip side, Shiva is a character who mills you passively, okay? She gains 3 speed on her moves and access to the same incredible damage pump that Goro has. And the last thing is locks cards in your card pool. She could do this on offense, she could do this on defense, and it was really, really toxic. It was not fun to play into, where she's just ignoring your attacks because she has 40 health, and she's going, discard this card, keep that in your card pool. Discard this card, keep that in your card pool. And so she would keep tons and tons of cards in your card pool. So you're saying, oh, well, she's a 4-hander. Well, why was she a problem? She had access to Air Ground Smash, which is a card that says if you have the water symbol, I'm an 8-hander. I'll just draw 4 more cards. And so she would fill her hand, and she would use that to lock your card pool down. And this is assuming, of course, that she didn't kill you on turn 1, right? Because she had access to a ton of attacks that were just coming in for ludicrous amounts of damage, and she still has them. And in addition to that, she also had a potent 4 diff attack that got -1 difficulty for each card in your card pool. So read, it was a 1 difficulty move, okay? And it was a throw. Self-pumping 4 diffs, 1 difficulty, 4 and an 8 throw. Like, she had just access to all this stuff, and she had to get banned, even though she was from like the most recently printed DLC, which was one of Jasco's only products that year. They still had to ban her because she and Goro, right, and forehand size in general was so antithetical to that like experience of playing this game. I remember vividly that Jason and Tim had a lesson learned kind of a mentality towards Goro and Shiva as an experiment, right? They acknowledge that four-handers just don't work because their handicaps have to be too high for their drawbacks, and they end up needing fundamentally broken abilities in order to justify their hand size. So it's disappointing for me to see these things on an unbanned list, because I spent almost 2 years of my life living and breathing this retro experiment that Jasko was putting out, right? And now it feels like Universus Games is ignoring that era and saying, oh no, we know better than you, right? Actually, we've looked at all of it and we think that that's cool, but we're doing our own thing. And that is their right. They own the card game. They are doing their own thing. But me and some of the other content creators like Tam Cardwell and Sam Tate were huge fans and advocates for the format. And I'm fairly confident that if we were not making content, we were not participating in these events, the game would have just died during the pandemic, right? None of us got a phone call about this retro ban list, and as far as I'm aware, the only person in the current Universus Games team that was present at all during the retro series is Tim Friedlieb. God bless him. Ignoring those experiences and lessons we learned collectively as a community is really sad and a little disrespectful. It's disappointing for me in particular because I was really looking forward to playing retro at Nationals, but I'm just not interested in repeating this grand experiment that I already took part in. So instead of that, Unfun Stuff Games is going to be organizing an online, high-stakes tabletop simulator retro monthly event starting in October. And on the last Saturday of each month, you can expect to see a big, bombastic, historic event that we will be taking seriously and actually use to continue to learn from our past and curate a ban list and update it from month to month. And you can find it today in the description for this video. Hope to see you guys later.